Okay. Welcome, Liba. Okay, we are live. We are ready to learn. Okay, welcome, Trig. Okay. Okay, folks. We continue with the laws of Eiruv. Just a brief reminder, the laws of Eiruv means the capacity that we have to join together in the basic idea of carrying on Shabbos in places that biblically we're allowed to, but rabbinically there was a decree made that we shouldn't be able to carry unless we make an Eiruv. So we discussed previously the laws of Erev Chatzerus, the law of a common courtyard that many homes would share together. And being that it's only in the private domain, how you can carry in that private domain, and the laws that would enable us to be able to do that, to carry again on Shabbos. And also in the Mavui, in the alleyway. What we're going to learn for the next few chapters, which will conclude today, the laws of Eiruv. We're going to learn about going beyond the city limits. There is something called Tchum Shabbos. Tchum means the limits of what you're able to walk on Shabbos. Walking is a good thing, but with limitations. So you can walk 2,000 amas, which is approximately a kilometer and a half, or maybe even 2 kilometers beyond the city limits. You're allowed to do that on Shabbos. So let's go into these laws. A person who leaves a city on a Friday afternoon, right? So the idea is over here, since you can go 2,000 amas beyond the limit, but it depends what is considered your place of resting on Shabbos, and therefore, since the law of 2,000 amas is a rabbinic law, the rabbis gave us a capability that we can now go beyond that limit, but we have to mindfully or physically set a place of where, so to speak, our residence is, or our place of being. So if a person leaves the city on a Friday before Shabbos and deposits food there for 2 meals at the distance from the city, but within the Sabbath limits, right? Not 2,000, more than 2,000, but be less than 2,000 amas. This is a measure of an amma is about 1.5 feet, so 2,000, about 3,000 feet beyond, right? Up to that limit. And by doing so, establishes that this is his place for Shabbos. So it's considered as if this is your base. This is your home base on Shabbos, where you deposited food for 2 meals. Now, you don't have to stay there. You can return back to the city before Shabbos begins and spend the night there and that will be called Erev Tanchumim. Tchum means limits. So this will now be called your Erev, what's joining you, that now you can extend that limit. That's the first halacha. The second halacha comes and tells us that the following day, so you slept back in your home, you've already set food there in that place, right? So the person now can walk 2,000 cubits. Again, this is the cubit, this size over here, about 1.5 feet, from the place where that Eruv was initially sent in all directions. You can go 2,000 in all directions. So what does that mean? So a person walks 2,000 cubits from his Eruv where he's set before Shabbos, the next day. Within his city, he may walk to the end of his limit, the 2,000. If, however, the entire city is included within his limit, in other words, you went beyond your city, but you went into another city, then that city his limit, the city is considered as if we're only 4 cubits and may continue the end of the limit beyond the city. So, in other words, you set your place within 2,000 amma from one city limit. Now, where you set it, the 2,000 will now get you into another city. Right? It's not so much a city, probably more like villages back in the day, right? It'll get you into that village, that town, let's call it a town. That town now, you can go the entire town because it was within your 2,000. It was within the 2,000 of where you set your place. Okay. Now, what does this mean? How does this work? So when a person sets an Eiruv again is this food that you put 2 portions or 2 portions of meals, for 2 meals rather, right? So now let's follow the nuanced detail here. If you place your Eruv 1,000 cubits to the east of where your house is in the city. So what does that mean? You can walk from that point 2,000 cubits eastward from where you set your Eiruv on Friday. You can also walk 2,000 cubits west from where you placed it, which will be 1,000 from your home, because you set it 1,000 cubits from your 2,000 cubits. 1,000 cubits from your home. So westward, you can only go 1,000 from your home, which means you wouldn't be able to walk to the entire city limits beyond that 1,000 cubits. That's all you could do. So if there is less than 1,000 cubits from the person's house to the borders of the city, let's say from your home westward, there's only 500 cubits till you get to the end of the city limits or the town limits, more than city. So if the city limits ends up 1 cubit less than the 1,000 that you could go, then the entire city is considered like only 4 cubits. And then you can proceed westward 996, because that's what you have left. The 4 from here's your home. Here is where you set it 1,000 eastward. So you went now 500 this way to the end of the city limits westward. It's only considered because it's part of the same city or town. So it's only considered 4 cubits, right? And therefore you can go now 996 cubits beyond the city limits as a result, westward. That was halacha number 3. So according to this principle, so if a person placed now the area of 2,000 cubits eastward of his house, what would that mean? It means going westward, I can't go westward anywhere because I've made my place of resting. I've established what I'm calling my sort of my Shabbos place, my so to speak residence, even though I'm not living there, but I'm right. I've established at 2,000 cubits this way. That means westwards, I can't go anywhere. So you can't even walk 1 cubit west from your house in that particular city. So when a person places the Eruv in a private domain, if he's in a big city like Nineveh, or the ruins of a city, or a cave where people are residing, that is fit to use for a dwelling, and others people are residing in, then he's permitted to walk throughout the entire area and 2,000 cubits beyond in all directions. Because you made it in a private domain, so now you can go in all directions. Okay? Now, if a person deposits his Eiruv within the city in which he's spending the Shabbos, his actions, halacha number 5, are of no consequence. And the Shabbos limit should not be measured from the Eiruv. Instead, he is like other inhabitants of the city and may proceed 2,000 cubits in all directions outside the city. Right? Because you did it within the city. The whole point of this Eiruv is to give you the capability to go beyond the city limits. We are allowed to go beyond the city limits without an Eiruv, 2,000 cubits in each direction. So if you did it within the city, then you're not giving you're not adding anything to doing that. So therefore, you're just like anybody else, that you can proceed 2,000 cubits in all directions outside of the city limits. So if a person deposits the Eiruv on the outlying areas that are included within the city's borders, and the calculation of the city's Shabbos limits begins beyond these borders, as if you've had deposited within the city proper. So in other words, you can have a village, a town, a city, and there's outlying areas that are part of that city. So if you deposited it there, it's as if you did it within the city proper, and there's no distinction, no difference, because that area in any case is called part of that town or city. If a person deposits the Eiruv beyond the city, the Shabbos limits, it's as if you didn't make an Eiruv. Why? Because here's the city. You deposited 2,000 amas beyond the city limits. You're not able to get there. You're not able to get to that because you're not allowed to go beyond 2,000 amas beyond the city limits. Hence, it's as if you didn't make an Eiruv. In other words, you make the Eiruv that enables you to go beyond the city limits. Beyond the city limits, it has to be within 2,000 amos and outside the city to enable you to go beyond even the 2,000 limits, the limitation that there would be naturally. Now, why? Why are you making this Erev Tanchumim? So this is a leniency that we can go beyond the rabbinic law of only going up to 2,000 amos beyond any kind of city, town limits. To establish it is because for a mitzvah. If a person wants to go visit a mourner, or to a wedding feast on Shabbos, or to greet his teacher, or to greet a colleague returning from a journey or the like, so the rabbis allowed us to establish this Erev Tanchumim. Or if you have fear that you gotta, you're in a town where there's thieves, there's non-Jews who you're a little frightened from. So the rabbis allowed us to create this Erev Tanchumim that will allow us to get beyond the city and the city limits that I would naturally be able to go to. So if I place it in a certain place beyond, that will give me, let's say, the opportunity to go to the next village, to the next town, because, my best friend just got married there and I want to go and celebrate with him. I'm not going there tonight, Friday, I'm not going there for Shabbos, but I want to walk there on Shabbos. But since I can't go beyond the city limits more than 2,000 amas, which is approximately 3,000 feet, which is approximately half a mile, or a little more than half a mile, if I got my numbers correct. So when there's a mitzvah to be performed, or that there's fear that I have staying in this town where I am now, so the rabbi said we can make this Eiruv, called Eiruv Tanchumim. Tanchum means tchum, border. And in order that I can now go beyond the regulated amount of space that I can go. Now, all foods may be used that are used for what we learned about previously for shituv. Shituv means to join yourself in the lanes that they had back in the day, that you can join different lanes to join different courtyards and different homes together that you can bring together the different foods. So whatever was being able to be used for the shituv that we learned earlier can always be used for the Erev Tanchumim. Similarly, all the foods that may not be used for shituv is not acceptable for Erev Tanchumim. So there's something we learned in the first chapter, the amounts. So for example, you need the amount of the capacity of 2 meals. What is considered the 2 meals? 18 grogerois, which we explained, 18 amounts of dry figs. It was something like about 12 ounces of different types of food, and we went through those details earlier. What is the minimum measure of the food acceptable for Erev Tanchumim? It's the amount of food sufficient for 2 meals, as we just mentioned. That's when the food in question is a side dish. Then it has to be minimum 2 meals, a minimum measure of the amount of sufficient food for 2 meals, as we learned again previously. Halacha number 8. Now, it's necessary to for the person to place where a person intends to spend Shabbos, that the Erev to be made in the same domain, so that it's possible for him to partake bein hashmeishis. In other words, where you're going to place this food, it has to be somewhere that I can get there and I have accessibility to it. Bein hashmeishis. Bein hashmeishis means twilight time, which means from sunset to nightfall, which is about a half an hour time, Friday evening, when we light candles 18 minutes before sunset. But sunset till nightfall is a question. Is that day or is it night? So that's when we set the time that this Eiruv, I have to have the capability of partaking of whatever food I've placed there. Therefore, if a person intends to spend Shabbos in a public domain and place the Erev in a private domain, or if he intends to spend Shabbos in the private domain and place the Erev in the public domain, the Erev is invalid. Why? Because it's possible to transfer articles from private to public or public to private. That's already a biblical transgression. So you need to be in a place yourself. If you placed this, the food in a private domain, you need to be bein hashmeishis in a private domain, because then that would make you capable of accessing it as a result at that time. Halacha number 9. If, however, the person intends to spend Shabbos in a private domain or in the public domain, and he places it in the Eiruv, right, this food in a karmelis. A karmelis, if you recall, we learned in the Laws of Shabbos, is a rabbinic is a rabbinic law of a rabbinic domain, and not private and public domains are biblical law. Karmelis is a rabbinic law. So since he intends, so if you put the food in a karmelis, which is by rabbinic law, has this definition, then you could be in a private domain or in a public domain. The Erev is acceptable. Why? Because again, bein hashmeishis is the time, this twilight time between sunset, nightfall, is the time that we established what the Eiruv is. So if it's in a karmelis is a place that I can biblically transfer, only rabbinically law. So for the sake of a mitzvah, bein hashmeishis, a karmelis, I am allowed to transfer to a public or a private domain for the sake of a mitzvah. Why? Because again, this time period, the twilight time, is questionable if it's day or it's really night. Is it really Shabbos or is it really still part of the Erev Shabbos, the eve of Shabbos. And therefore, when it comes to the sake of a mitzvah, the rabbi said, you can transfer from the public to the Carmelists, or from the private to the Carmelists, and back and forth. And therefore, if you put the food in such a place, it's okay. All prohibitions introduced by the rabbinic decree were not applied banish Moshes in a situation involving a mitzvah or a case of urgent need. Right? So if you have some urgent need, or you have a mitzvah that needs to be fulfilled, whatever the case may be, this has the, since this is, we're setting up the Eiruv, not a problem as a result. Halacha number 10. Now, the person places the Eiruv in a closet. He locks it, then he loses the key. If you can remove the Eiruv without performing a labor that is forbidden on Shabbos, then this Eiruv is valid. What's the point over here? Again, the Eiruv has to be in a place that I have accessibility to it when Shabbos enters, ben hashmeishes. But if I place it somewhere and I don't have access to it, so that I can't come and take that food, then the Eiruv is not valid. If a person places the Eiruv on top of a reed or a shaft that grows from the earth, it's not valid. This is a decree because why? You might break off the reed. You might break, which is a biblical prohibition. If these articles are already detached and they were implanted in the ground, the Eiruv is valid because there's not a biblical law that you may transgress by uprooting something from its source, like a reed that is growing, and therefore it is valid. Halacha number 11. Whenever a person deposits an Eiruv, he granted 4 cubits in which to carry at the place of the Eiruv. So you place it here, you've got 4 cubits that you can, that is that particular area. Therefore, a person places the Eiruv Tanchum at the end of the Shabbos limits, right? What if you've then placed it at the 2,000 Amma point, and the Eiruv rolls 2 cubits beyond the Sabbath limit? Remember, we said a Eiruv is only valid until within the 2,000 Amma limit. After that, it's invalid. Why? Because you can't get to it, because you're not allowed to go beyond the 2,000 Amma limit. So what happens now? You put it at that limit, but a wind came. It blew it over. So since it's 2 Ammas beyond, and we have the 4 Amma, the Eiruv has a 4 Amma sort of radius that it can partake of. Therefore, the Eiruv is valid because it's not considered as it left the original place. More than 2, because you've got the square of 2. You've got the square of the 4 Ammas. So therefore, it can be removed only the 2 Ammas. If, however, it rolls more than 2, then it's beyond the Shabbos limit, and therefore it's not valid. As we stated, the Eiruv is placed beyond the person's Shabbos limit. It is invalid. Because why is it invalid? Because you can't get to it when Shabbos entered. Then it becomes invalid. So beyond 2002, it's invalid. Now the following rules apply. An Eiruv rolled more than 2 cubits beyond the Shabbos limit, or it became lost, it got burnt, or it contained truma. Truma is tithing that goes to the kohen, to the Levi, and it became impure. So if this occurred before the Shabbos began, the Eiruv is invalid. If it occurred after nightfall, it's valid. Why? Again, when Shabbos enters, it has to be food that I have accessibility to, that I can partake in. If it got lost or burned, or it was truma and now became impure truma can't be eaten. If it's burnt, it can't be eaten. If it's lost, it can't be eaten. Therefore, when Shabbos entered at Ben Hashmeishes, at this twilight time, I didn't have accessibility to it. Therefore, it's an invalid Eiruv. If though this all happened, in other words, got burned, it became impure, or it got lost once it was nightfall, right, from sunset to nightfall, that half-hour time period, since the Eruv was already established at the beginning of sunset, which is the beginning of Benish Moshes of the twilight's time, it's valid. Because again, it doesn't matter what happened afterwards, I don't have accessibility to it. What is establishing the law of the Eruv? When Shabbos enters. Okay. If one is in doubt about the above, if the Eruv is valid, for when there is a doubt regarding the validity of an Eruv, we consider it acceptable. Why? Because it's rabbinic law. Rabbinic law were lenient. And since this is about carrying in a rabbinic manner, right, the decree of going beyond the 2,000 amma is a rabbinic law. So since it's rabbinic law, they made the decree. They're lenient when it comes to a doubt. Therefore, if the Eruv was eaten Benish Moshes, it is acceptable. Because it was eaten during Benish Moshes, in other words, already Shabbos came in, and therefore it established it right away, and therefore it's acceptable. The above rules are relevant for the following situation. So what did we speak about now? We spoke about till now, about making this Eruv, by giving me a capability. My best friend got married. He's in the town over, and I want to go to celebrate with him. But Friday night, I want to be with my family. So I have to establish, and that next town is within reach. If I make an Eruv beyond the city limits, right, then I will be able to reach that town. But if I don't make the Eruv, I won't be able to. So I go. So food is set outside of the city limits in some domain. We had either it's in a public, Carmelis, or a private domain. That enables me that I can get to the next town over, right? Now what if I tell somebody, please, I brought the food there, or I tell somebody, two individuals, told the person, go and establish an Eruv on our behalf. So we establish an Eruv for one before the commencement of Shabbos, and for the other, Benish Moshes. Right? So he did one, he got there kind of late, so he was able to establish one before Shabbos, but the second one was already at the twilight time. So the Eruv that was established before that Shabbos came into being, and it was eaten Benish Moshes. Some animals got to it and they ate it. Right? Or someone didn't, hey, there was some food there. Hey, look at that, lucky me. Some food, I'm gonna eat some food. It got eaten. And he asked, what's going on here? Why is this, we're creating parameters here of the law so we can understand and appreciate what the law is. So commencement of Shabbos was eaten Benish Moshes. The Eruv was then established. Benish Moshes was eaten, and the Eruv that was established Benish Moshes was eaten after nightfall. So the ruling is that both Eruvs are valid. Either is it day or is it night? If it was eaten during Benish Moshes, and you want to call that daytime, so therefore it's good. But then if it was eaten afterwards, it's for sure nighttime. Why? Because again, the halachic status of Benish Moshes is a matter of doubt. And when there's a doubt regarding the validity of an Eruv, it's considered acceptable. Nevertheless, if there's a question whether it was nightfall or not nightfall, you shouldn't establish the Eruv. But if you did establish it, it's still valid. Because here now the question is if you don't know it was nightfall. Here it's a question. Before it was not a question of whether you knew the facts or not. It was what is we're taking the leniency on both sides of the day of Shabbos. Halacha number 14. Okay, now what happens? You made your Eruv, but there was an avalanche of stones that now covered over the Eruv, right? So means I can't access it. Before Shabbos came, there was an avalanche. A bunch of stones now are covering over it, and I'm not able to access it unless I remove. So if I can remove it without a forbidden labor of Shabbos, then it's permissible. Then it's permissible to remove those stones, Benish Moshes, at this twilight time, in order that I can establish my Eruv, that it will become valid, that I can use it for the following day. If the avalanche fell after nightfall, it's valid, and I don't have to remove anything. Why? If the only way I can remove those stones is by actually performing a forbidden labor, it doesn't matter because it fell after nightfall. And when does the establishment of the Eruv become established? Is when Shabbos enters by sunset at that twilight time, and therefore it is a valid and acceptable Eruv. Halacha number 15. If, however, if you establish an Eruv with Truma, concerning which there was a doubt about its ritual purity, the Eruv is invalid. Why? Because this meal is not fit to be eaten. Remember, the validity of it is that you can have accessibility to it, right? That you can actually partake in it. Well, if you have accessibility to it, but you can't eat it because it is impure Truma, you're not allowed to eat impure Truma, so then it is an invalid Eruv. Similarly, an Eruv is invalid in the following situation. A person possesses 2 loaves of bread that were Truma. One of them is pure and the other one is impure, but you don't know which one's pure and impure. And you might ask, well, what kind of crazy? We're creating parameters of the law here. That's what's important. Not like, hey, get your act together. So although he says, you might say, well, the loaf that is pure, whichever one it is, will serve as my Eruv. This Eruv is invalid. Why? Because in fact, I can't eat from either one of the loaves because I don't know which one's pure and which one's impure. So I can eat from either one of them until they became purified. And Shabbos entered, they were not purified, they cannot be partaken in. Halacha number 16. If a person said, this loaf of bread is not consecrated today, but I will be consecrated tomorrow, then you can use this loaf for the Eruv, and it's valid. Why? Because when it came Benish Moshes, Shabbos, it was not yet become consecrated. It only became consecrated the following day. Well, Benish Moshes, it wasn't consecrated, and therefore, remember, what makes a valid Eruv? What happens at the beginning of entering Shabbos at sunset, immediately, and therefore at that point, it was not a consecrated loaf. In other words, I have loaves, I want to give it to the Holy Temple that it should be used for consecrated purposes. But it's only tomorrow I'm going to. So right now, it is okay. If, however, I said today it's consecrated and tomorrow will not be consecrated, it may not be used for any Eruv, for it is fit to be eaten only after nightfall. So in that instance, right now, when Shabbos entered, it was consecrated, and therefore I have no access, except I don't have access to eat it. I'm not allowed to eat it, and therefore it cannot be used as an Eruv. Similarly, if one said aside Truma and made a stipulation that it will not become Truma until nightfall, it may not be used for the Eruv. For throughout Benish Moshes, it is Tevel, which may not be eaten, and it's necessary for the meal to be set aside Eruv to be fit to be eaten before the commencement of Shabbos. So now I set aside Truma. Truma means the tithes, right? And I stipulate that it's not going to become Truma until nightfall. Well, it's not Truma until nightfall, but it's Tevel, which means something that needs to be taken Truma from it. And therefore, since it's something until Truma is taken from it, Truma meaning the tithes that are taken from it, since the tithes were not taken, therefore it's not something I can eat. And since I can't eat it, what does that mean? It is not fit at the commencement of Shabbos to be eaten, so therefore it cannot be used as an Eiruv. Halacha number 17. When is an Eiruv? When an Eiruv is placed in the cemetery, it's invalid. Why? Because it's forbidden to have pleasure from anything, benefit anything in the cemetery. So since I can't eat over there, I would be, if I would eat over there, I would be deriving pleasure. I'm not allowed to, so therefore you can't place it in the cemetery. If the Eiruv is placed base a base of pras means not a cemetery, but a place, a field where there's it's questionable that there might be a human remains there or Jews that were buried there. Since there's a question about it, but it's only a place where a Kohen can't enter, unless he can't enter because there might be some remains there. But since a Kohen could enter with a box, they have these kind of boxes that you can kind of walk through, and therefore he makes himself separate. Since that can be done, so you can place it in such a place. Halacha number 18. These rules should be followed when many desire to join together in Erev Tanchumim. So now we were really talking about, I want to go personally to my friend who's just got married in the following town. So I now created a method that I can do that. But now, let's say we want to get together as a group. So they should each contribute enough food for 2 meals and place the food in a single container and place it whichever place they choose to. Now, if one person desires to make the Erev on behalf of many people, he must grant them a share by means of another person and notify them. In other words, what you do is you have a couple of loaves of bread, right? And you give it to another person. The person raises it on behalf of the rest of the people that want to go. So he's doing it for their benefit. And at the same time, you have to also notify them. It's necessary to do that. Why? Because you can't make an Erev Tanchumim unless the person consents. Because it might be possible that person, you made an Erev Tanchumim to go out west to this town. But maybe one of your friends has another friend on the east side east of this town and wants to go visit him because, he's sitting Shiva for the loss of his parents, loss of a parent, and he wants to go visit him on Shabbos to bring him some Shabbos joy. And it's on the east side. So he doesn't want to use your Tanchumim. He doesn't want to be relegated to it and stuck to that because maybe he wants to go somewhere else. So therefore you need consent. As opposed to when it came to carrying in the courtyard, there you don't consent because there is no, there's only benefit, there is no loss. Now, if a person only gave consent on Shabbos, that's okay because it's only consent. But you have to notify the person before Shabbos. You can't wait till nightfall and then notify them. That's not sufficient. Number 19, if all individuals entitled to take possession of their share in the Erev, for another person, so all individuals entitled to take possession of a share of the Erev for another person with regard to an Erev Chatzeres are also entitled to take possession of a share of the Erev for another person with regard to Erev Tanchumim. Conversely, all individuals who are not entitled to take possession of the share of the Erev for another with regard to the Erev Chatzeres are not entitled to take possession of the share of the Erev of another person with regard to the Erev Tanchumim. So we learned this this idea that if someone doesn't keep Shabbos publicly, or someone who doesn't believe in this in the law of the Eiruv, right? They don't believe in the rabbinic law, so therefore they're not capable of being part of this. So those are laws that we learned in the first chapter. So he's just mentioning it's similar laws when it comes to Erev Tanchumim as it is for the Erev Chatzeres. A person who gives a certain amount of money to a homeowner with the intent that person should buy a loaf of bread for him, and he should go establish the Erev Tanchumim on his behalf. So we assume that it was established. You gave somebody to do this. You asked him, please do this. If, however, he gives money to a storekeeper or to a baker and tells him to do this, right? And he just says, have someone acquire a share on my behalf. We don't assume that that person established the Eiruv, because we're talking, it's a storekeeper, it's a baker, he's consumed with a lot of bread. And just because you told him to, here's some money, go and have my share with others, we don't assume that was done. Now, even with regard to the storekeeper, if he tells him, though, clearly establish an Eiruv for me with this money I'm giving you, right? And he says, clearly establish this with the money that I'm giving you, right, to buy bread or other foodstuffs in order to make an Eiruv on my behalf, right? Or if he tells them, give me food in exchange for this and establish an Eiruv for me, we assume that this person fulfilled and made and established the Eiruv. So you can be rest assured that the person did it. 21. If a person established an Erev Tanchumim on behalf of his sons and daughters who are below the age of majority, bar 12 and 13, or on behalf of Canaanite servant and maidservant, they can do it with or without their knowledge. Why? Because they are part, they're the servant is doesn't have their own hands, so to speak, and the child also below bar and bat mitzvah doesn't. Therefore, they establish an Eiruv for them, for themselves. They also establish it for these individuals. A person, by contrast, though, can't, when they establish an Eiruv for their sons and daughters who are over 12 and 13, or for a Hebrew or maidservants, or for his wife, he has to get consent, even if they eat at his own table. Why? Because what did we say? Because you establish an Eiruv for me, but that then limits me if you made it, let's say, to the west, but I want to go to the east to visit somebody else on Shabbos day, and you made this for me, so you're limiting me, so you have to have consent. What is considered consent? If I told you and you remain silent without objecting, then the Eiruv is established for your behalf. But if a person says, but if a person, they themselves establish, if your son or daughter establish their own Eiruv because they want to go visit their friend rather than going visit somebody, the father's relative or friend, for example, so then there is no greater objection than that by the very fact that they set up their own Eiruv. A child that's 6 years old or less may be taken, relying on the Eiruv established for his mother, because they are one and part of the family. And there's no need to have a separate amount of food equivalent for 2 meals. Remember, if you're going more than one person, each person needs to contribute it to this Eiruv, unless you have someone who is doing it on behalf of everybody. But if it's a child that's 6 or less, then you don't need to have food for them. From 6 to 12 or 13, you do have to have a separate amount of food for them. Halacha number 22. Person has an option of sending an Eiruv with an agent. So this we talked about, you went and established, but you can now send an agent to deposit in a location that you desire. Now, you should not, though, make your agent someone who's deaf, mute, mentally incompetent individual, or a child, or a person that doesn't believe in this mitzvah. If he sends the Eiruv with one of these individuals, it's not acceptable. If, however, you sent the Eiruv with one of these individuals to give instructions to another person who is acceptable as an agent, in other words, they're just giving it over to the agent is going to do it, right? Then the latter would take it and deposit it in the desired location. This Eiruv is acceptable. Even if you now gave the Eiruv, the food, to a monkey or to an elephant, you place on them, and then they would go and give it to the agent, and the agent then would place it in the appropriate place. it's acceptable. Here's one stipulation though. When the person who's sending the Eiruv, he must watch from afar until he sees that that person who's not fit, right, as an agent or the animal, that reaches the person who is fit in order that they should deposit the Eiruv. Similarly, if an individual is joined together in an Erev Tanchumin, have the option of sending the Eiruv via an agent if they desire. There's many individuals that do this. Halacha number 23. Oh boy, I believe how long this is. When one person of the group or people tell another person, go out and make an Eiruv on my behalf, and the person does so, choosing the direction in which to make the Eiruv himself, the Eiruv is acceptable. They may rely on it, for they did not specify the direction they desired, right? Go out, make an Eiruv on my behalf. When a person says, establish an Eiruv for me with dates, the agent establishes with dates, right? But he goes and makes it with dry figs, or he mentions dry figs and the agent uses dates, the Eiruv is not acceptable. Similarly, if the person asked that the Eiruv be placed in a closet and it was placed in a dovka, or he asked that it be placed in a dovka and it was placed in a closet, or he asked it to be placed in a house and it was placed in a loft, right? And it was, in such instance, the Eiruv is not acceptable because the agent didn't fulfill what the intent was of the person who sent them. If I were the person told the agent, establish an Eiruv for me without making any specifications, the Eiruv is acceptable regardless, whether you use dry figs, dates, deposit in a house, or a loft. Halacha number 24. Just as a blessing is recited before establishing an Eiruv in the courtyard or in a shituv in a lane, so too the blessing is for Erev Tanchumin. We make the same blessing. After the blessing is recited, one should say, with this Eiruv, it is permissible for me to proceed 2,000 cubits in every direction from this location where it has been established. He's establishing the Eiruv on behalf of many individuals. He should say that this Eiruv, it is possible for so and so, or for the people of the community, or for the inhabitants of the city to proceed 2,000 cubits in any direction from this location. Whew. Okay. Continue. That was a very long chapter. Now we continue in chapter number 7. Label, please continue.
Okay, chapter 7, the second chapter for today. Chapter 7 of Eiruvin, of making these Eiruvs. So, halacha aleph, number 1, we're going to continue talking about this idea of making an Eiruv Tchumen, to make an Eiruv to be able to walk more than 2,000 cubits out of the city limits, and that's by putting down some food at a specific spot within the 2,000 limit, and then you could go from there again another 2,000 cubits. So, Misha Yatsa made of Shabbos Chutz Medina. If someone left before Shabbos, he left the city. He went out of the city. And he stood in a specific place, like a specific what's it called place, like a designated place, whether it's within the 2,000 or at the end of the 2,000. And he says, I am making like a marking that I'm going to rest in this place. And then he went back to the city, and he slept in the city. So then on Shabbos day he can go to that place where he designated, and he could walk 2,000 cubits from there in any direction. This is the main concept of this Eiruv called Tchumen. Arev beraglov, to make an Eiruv, to make this Eiruv with his feet. The fact that we talked about this idea of leaving food for 2 meals over there, that's to make it easier for a wealthier person, that he could send someone else in his stead to put it down over there. Halacha base number 2. If he has in mind, he doesn't necessarily go out to the place, but he has in his mind, he designates a specific place. Says, I know about 1,500 cubits from here, I know there's a specific place, whether it's a specific tree or a specific hut or whatever it is, a tree, a house, a gutter, or a certain fence. He knows the place. And when Shabbos comes in, where he is standing, specifically where he is standing right now, when Shabbos comes in, there is 2,000 or less amas, cubits, until that location. And he had in mind to go there, and he even started out to go there in order to make that place into his place of resting, in order to have that location. And he has enough time before Shabbos to get there when he starts thinking about it. Even though he didn't make it there, as he's walking, his friend says, come to my house, and he goes and he sleeps in his friend's house. Or he decided on his own, well, I'm not schlepping out there, I'm going back to my house and I'm going to sleep, or something happened and he got delayed. Then on the next day on Shabbos, he's allowed to go all the way to there, and to go from there 2,000 cubits in any direction. Since he had in mind, and this idea of having it in mind is very important. And since he had it in mind, to get to that place, he's allowed to go. And he even started going out there, which shows really that he had it in mind. So it's as if he stood there, or he put his food there. Number 3, what are we talking about? In what scenario are we talking about? Ba'ani, and a poor person. That a poor person, we don't necessarily need him to put food there. You maybe can't afford to put two meals over there. A wealthier person, so he could put food there. He could send someone to put food there. A poor person, we just want him to put his 2 feet there to mark the place, right? So if it was a poor person, or if it's far, for example, if someone was traveling and he's worried that by the time I go there to put my own 2 feet in that location, it's going to get dark and it's dangerous to travel all dark. But a condition has to be that right now there's enough time for me to get all the way to that location before it gets dark, before Shabbos comes in, right? As we mentioned, the Eiruv has to be done before Shabbos comes in. While Shabbos comes in, the Eiruv has to be there. Otherwise, it's not considered to be an Eiruv. So there has to be enough time for him to go. Even if in order to get there on time, he has to run it with all his might, still that's considered to be okay. And another condition, it has to be less than 2,000 or less cubits between the place that he is right now and the place where he has in mind. Aval. So then it's okay, then it could work. Aval. But the opposite, if he wasn't a poor person, or there isn't enough time to get there before Shabbos, or if there's more than 2,000 cubits right now between the person and that location that he's having in mind, or he didn't have proper intention in mind to acquire that place to sleep, to rest, so to speak. So then you do not acquire that place of rest from afar. And he only has 2,000 cubits to walk from where he is right now when it gets dark, meaning when Shabbos comes in. Halacha Daled, number 4. If someone goes before Shabbos and he's in a private domain and he says, this is my location, this is where I'm going to be for Shabbos. Or he's traveling and he has in mind that I'm going to get to such and such location before Shabbos comes in, and that's where I'm going to rest. And I'm acquiring for myself that location. So then you can go all the way to that location, and he can go out from that location 2,000 cubits to any direction. What if this private domain was not, so a private domain can be a fenced off area, not necessarily a place where someone lives. So a fenced off area, when it has different halachas, if it was connected, hukaf ledira, meaning that it's connected to a private house, place where someone lives, or if it wasn't hukaf ledira. So here's talking about what if the private domain is not hukaf ledira, it's not connected to a house, or if it's a little mountain, or if it's a little valley. So now, if it's not connected to a private living place, so then it makes a difference on how big it is, and it makes if you could carry in that private domain. If it is more than Beis Asayim, which is 2,000 squared, I think, amas, 2,000 squared cubits. So then it's too big to be a private domain, and it's not considered private domain, and you can't carry in it. If it is less than that, so then it's private domain that you could carry in it. So the halacha is, if it was base asayim if it was that amount or less, so then he can carry within it, and he could go from each direction. At least he can go 2,000 cubits in every direction. But what if this private domain was bigger than a base asayim? So then the halacha is that within that location, even though it's private domain, you can only go 4 cubits. So then so out of that 4 cubits, he can only walk, meaning he can only carry within 4 cubits. So then outside of that 4 cubits, he can walk 2,000, but not from the limits of that private domain. And the same applies if he puts his Eiruv in a place that is not connected to a dwelling place, meaning a place where someone lives. Number 5. If someone acquires a place, but from far, he didn't finish. So he's gonna give an example what it means. If he didn't finish, so then he does not acquire that place and it doesn't become his, that he can go and rest over there, meaning that he can't go from there another 2,000 cubits. Kate said, what's the example? What he was traveling. I said the plainest, so I'm gonna rest, but in that field. The field that's, I don't know, a kilometer away from here, or that valley. Or he says, I'm gonna rest in a place that's 1,000 cubits from here. So he can't acquire something from far, and then he only has 2,000 cubits from where he's standing and going forward. What's the concept over here? The concept is that he has to mark a specific location, not a general location, a very specific location, like under that tree that I usually rest, or something like that, not in that field. The field is too big. It's not a specific location. Number 6, Amar, what if he says, says, I'm going to rest under such and such a tree, that oak tree that's at the end of the road, or something like that, right? Or by such and such a rock, that and he means a very specific place. Now, there's another problem. What if it's too big? Basically what the Rambam is going to say is that it has to be, that location that he's designating for himself has to be less than 8 cubits squared. So if under that tree or that rock there is 8 or more cubits, like kana shvisa, so then it's not, he didn't acquire it for himself, because he did not have a very specific location in mind. He had too big of a location in mind, because you have to have a location that's 4 by 4, that's 4 amas, that's 4 cubits. Because what if he comes under that tree and he says, okay, this is where I'm going to sit, but Shema Bar Bamas Acheris, it's 8 cubits. So maybe it was the other 4 cubits that he had in mind, not this 4 cubits. So therefore, it doesn't apply. Zayin, number 7. So therefore, what if it is 8 cubits? So he says, oh, I'm going to be under that tree, but the north side of under that tree, or something like that. He has to make it a more specific intention. If it was less than 8 cubits, so then it's not a problem. Then he does acquire it, because there isn't place for 2 sets of 4 cubits, and there he could acquire a part of it. What if 2 people were traveling, and one of them, he knows, there's a place further down, there's a tree, and that's where I'm going to rest, and he acquires for himself a place, that's where he's going to rest, and the other guy that he's traveling with has no clue, he's never traveled down this way. He can make the other guy like his shliach. He can say, I put it in your hands where we're going to rest. And the person that does know the place, he can have in mind his friend as well. Halacha ches, number 8. If people from the town, they said, Yankel, we're all going to travel, we're all going to go tomorrow, but someone needs to go and put food there. So they say, Yankel, go and take the food there. And he starts traveling. and something happens on the way. His friend grabs him on the way, says, "Come, we're having a farbrengen over here. Come hang out with us," right? And he doesn't end up taking the food to that location. So since they sent him with the food is not there. They did not acquire a place. So they can't travel more than 2,000 cubits outside of the city. But this guy that didn't bring the food there, he did acquire for himself an Eiruv. If you were listening closely to the way that Rambam discussed it, he had the intention. So for him, that's good enough. But for the rest of the community, for the rest of the city, it's not good enough because he didn't put the food there. He was already started walking there. And he had in mind to dwell over there and to rest over there. And he already started to travel. So therefore, this guy, Yankel, could go there the next day. And from that location go 2,000 cubits to any direction. Number 9. So this that we said, that the person that's acquiring a location and he has in mind about acquiring a location, we said that he has to start out. Right? He doesn't necessarily have to make it all the way there, but he has to start out. So the Rambam says he doesn't even have to go out to the outskirts of the city. He doesn't even have to go to the field. It's enough that he even went down. He lived on the second floor and he went down to the first floor. And that the person living on the first floor says, no, come into my house. And then he forgot or whatever, he decided not to go. But he started out even by going down the steps. That's enough. Anybody who acquires this shvisa, this idea of a location to rest, but from afar, he doesn't even have to mention shvisa. He doesn't have to verbalize it. That I'm going to rest in such and such place. As long as he had it in mind, when he started out even a little bit, it's enough that he acquired for himself a location to rest, and then from there, obviously, he could go another 2,000 cubits. And obviously, we don't even have to say, but there's someone that actually went to that place and he put his 2 feet there. That he obviously acquires a location the next day that he could come back there and go from there another 2,000 cubits. He doesn't have to mention it. He doesn't have to verbalize it. It's enough that he did it. Number 10, the final halach in this perek. The students, they're in the yeshiva, but there's no food in the yeshiva. So what do? They go to the local people in order to eat. And the local people that's in, they're on the outskirts of the city by the farms, etc. And they would go to the fields in order to eat by the balabatim. Because these balabatim, these people that lives by the fields, they have food for those who are passing by. And then they go and they sleep in the study hall by the Beis Medrash. So they're not. It's not the place where they ate is not considered the place of resting. It's their location is considered the Beis Medrash, not where they ate. Why? Because theoretically they don't want to go out to eat. Theoretically they don't want to go somewhere else to eat. It's just that there's no food in the Beis Medrash. But if there was food in the Beis Medrash, they wouldn't go out to the fields. And their mind, what they have in mind is that where are they resting? Where's their place? Their place is in the Beis Medrash, and therefore they can't consider the place where they ate to be another location that they could go another 2,000 cubits from there. It's only 2,000 cubits from their Beis Medrash.
Thank you, Label. In other words, where your mind, in the mind of the person, that's where you're at. So the mind of the student is, of course, in their studies. It's Friday night, and you can be or Shabbos day, and you want to go eat. But your real mind, where you really are, is in the place of study, not by the place of eating. Very good. Thank you. Okay, we continue the last chapter. This is the last chapter of Eiruvin, and we will. What that concludes. Tomorrow we'll go actually into the laws of Yom Kippur. Okay. You cannot make 2 Eiruvs for yourself In other words, you want to go one in the east and one in the west. Why? Because you got a friend in the west and got a friend in the east, and you want to go visit two of them, right? You can't do that. Because you cannot make two Eruvs for one day. And if you did make the mistake and you made an Eruv for in two directions, because you thought you could. So if you made that mistake and you established these two Eruvin in two different directions, because again, you thought that it was permitted, or you told two people to establish an Eruv for yourself, and one was established in the north, one was established in the south, you may walk only in the area common to both of them. So you're stuck between them, right? Because you can only make one. What does that mean? How do you go between them? Can only go in the place where both of them would be able to go. But also, so if you put to the east 1,000 amas, 1,000 cubits, 1,000 amas to the east, and you put to the west 500. So now you can go from the so again you put to the east 1,000, you put to the west 500 from where you are, right? So the person that put the Eruv to put it to the you can only go 1,000 to the west, because from the east to the west, east is 1,000, and from the from this place to the from the east to the west would make 2,000 altogether, right? And so from the 500, you can go 1,500 only to the east. That's what the halacha is saying over here. Therefore, if a person established an Eruv 2,000 cubits to the east, and the other was 2,000 to the west, what does that mean? You can't move from where you are in your home. You can't go outside even. Why? Because you were only able to go 2,000 this far, 2,000 that far, since you were only allowed to make one. So there's no distance that you can go either one. Halacha Gimel. Now, you could do it though if you make a stipulation. You can place two of them. Let's say you have a friend in one town over here, one friend over in this town. One is got a wedding that you're Sheva Brachos you want to celebrate. The other person is sitting Shiva, and you don't know which one you're going to go to. So you can make a stipulation that since both are for a mitzvah, remember. So I'm not certain which one I want. So I'm going to make a stipulation on that I will choose. This is called a breira, a choice of where I want to go the following day. And therefore, I want to go in this direction or that direction, I will make the choice. But I can't go on both. I can't go on both. But I will choose tomorrow which direction I want to go. And therefore, I'm able to use the Eruv that I've set and go, again, the 2,000 cubits beyond that direction. Halacha number 4. So, now we spoke about Shabbos. So just as it's forbidden to go beyond the city limits more than 2,000 amas, so likewise it's also to go beyond the city limits on Yom Kippur. A person who transfers an article from one domain to another on Shabbos is liable. So too, if a person transfers an article on Yom Kippur from one domain to another. On other holidays, by contrast, it's permitted to transfer articles from one domain to another domain, because on Yom Tov, you're allowed to carry. Therefore, if an Eruvin was established in courtyards or in lanes for Yom Kippur, as they are established in Shabbos, the similar Erev Tanchumim may be established on Yom Kippur and the holidays that are established for Shabbos. Same thing. The same laws as we learned earlier. Now, the following law, a holiday that occurs next to Shabbos. So on the holiday, you're allowed to carry. Shabbos, you're not allowed to carry, right? So whether it's before or after Shabbos, there's 2 days of holidays that need to be observed. And if it's 2 days of the diaspora of holidays, so a person may establish 2 Eruvin in 2 different directions and rely on either of them for the first day and the other on the second day. So you can make 2 of them, but I'm only going to use one for 1 day because it's 2 days holidays in the diaspora, and I'll use another one for the other day. Similarly, you can also establish a single Erev in one direction and rely on it for 2 days. And the law of going beyond the city limits also occurs for holidays, even though you can carry on holidays, right? But you can carry on holidays, but you can't go beyond the city limits on holidays. So you can make one single Erev in one direction and rely on it for 2 days, even though it's only one single Erev, but right, we don't have to worry about that. Now, when does this apply? When there's 2 days observed the holidays in diaspora. Regarding the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, there's a different rule because it is considered as a single day, and therefore you cannot have one Eruv that would be that can be used for both days because it's considered, it has a quality of being considered a 1 day entity. So you can't use it for both days. Halacha number 6. Now, if a person deposits an Eruv, you can make the following stipulation. On this Shabbos, my Eruv shall be in effect, but not on another Shabbos. Or on another Shabbos, my Eruv shall be in effect, but not on this Shabbos. So you can make that stipulation, right? Because remember, when you're making the Eruv, making it for a particular Shabbos. So you can make a stipulation of the Eruv should not be in effect on the Shabbos on Shabbos, but not on holidays, or on holidays and not on Shabbos. You can make those stipulations. When a person tells 5 others, I'm establishing an Eruv on behalf of one of you. In other words, we talked about that you're going to go visit, your friend got married, or you want to visit your friend who's, mourning. Now, what if you want to go with a bunch of friends and you are establishing an Eruv, but you don't know which friend you want to go with yet? You didn't choose. So you can choose the person who will go with you, and who you want to go with. You don't, but you're saying that you're going for all 5. You're mentioning to all 5 of them, establishing on behalf of one of the 5. You can choose that person even after nightfall, even though it's on Shabbos, because this is the principle called Breira, choice, and it's a rabbinic law. And this is just, exercising choice. You're not doing something, and therefore you can even do that after nightfall, choosing who you want to go with on Shabbos. Similarly, a person may establish an Eruv for all the Shabbos of the year and stipulate, if I desire to rely on this Eruv, I may go, and if I do not desire to rely on it, I may not go. Because remember, the Eruv is making you've made one Eruv, and now you're getting stuck to go in this one direction. What if you want to go in another direction? So you can stipulate, I'll choose, right? It's a choice. So you're not going to be governed by it at all times, but only when you make the choice. So you're able to do that on Shabbos, to make that choice, that decision, even after nightfall. Halacha number 8. When a person establishes an Eruv for 2 days of the holiday, right, as we observe in the diaspora, or for Shabbos and a holiday, right, that are come one after the other. Even when the person establishes a single Eruv in one direction for both days, the Eruv must be accessible, right? Remember that law. So it must be accessible the first night and the second night, because I'm now using it for 2 different days. It has to be at Benish Moshes when the Shabbos or the holiday enters. It has to be something that I have accessibility to it. So what should you do? You should take the Eruv to the desired place on the eve of Shabbos or on the eve of the holiday and wait until nightfall. Then you may take it in your hand and carry it away. If it's the holiday, because you're allowed to carry on the holiday, right? On the following day, you should take it to the same location, deposit there until nightfall, and eat it if it's Friday night, or take it with him if it is the night of the holiday, right? Friday night, you can't carry it, right? You can't carry it, but so you can eat it over there. But if it's holiday, you can take it with you and you can carry with it. This is necessary they are 2 different expressions of holiness. In other words, each day has its own holiness. So I can't now, I have to make it accessible for me for each particular day. And it's not considered as a single extended day with regard to that which is possible to say on the first night, that it should be established for both nights. No, each night has to be its own established. In the situation described in the previous halacha, where the Eruv to be eaten on the first day, it is in effect for the first day, but the person may not establish an Eruv with food for the second day, right? Because it was eaten already. If they establish an Eruv by walking to the desired location on the first day, right? Because remember, it doesn't have to be only by food. You can go there by walking and establishing it. So you did that on the first day. You may establish an Eruv for the second day by only walking to the same location and making a resolution that he is establishing this as his place for the day. So if he established an Eruv with bread on the first day, that's when he walked there. But what if he did with bread? He has 2 options. If he desires to establish an Eruv by walking to the desired location on the second day, the Eruv is acceptable. If he desires to establish an Eruv by depositing a loaf of bread, he may, provided he uses the same loaf of bread that he used the first day. Now, that was holidays and Shabbos. Now, Yom Kippur would fall on a Friday, which you can't now because of the calendar that we have, but when it was by the law of testimony of witnesses, then it could fall on a Friday or on Sunday. In both instances, it can't, right? And before and after Shabbos. So during the era of the sanctification of the moon was dependent on being cited by witnesses. So it appears to me, says the Rambam, that the 2 days are considered to be an extended day and are considered to be one continuum holiness. So therefore, whatever you set for the one day continues for the following. Number 11, the statement made previously that a person may establish 2 different Eruvim in 2 different directions for 2 days applies only when it's possible for the person to reach both the Eruvim on the first day without departing from the Shabbos limits. If, however, it is impossible on the first day for him to reach the Eruv for the second day, the Eruv for the second day is invalid, right? If you can't reach it. The rationale is that the mitzvah of Eruv can be fulfilled only with a meal that is fit to be eaten while it is still day. Since a person may not reach the Eruv intended for the second day on the first day because it is beyond his Shabbos limits, it's not considered to be a meal that is fit to be eaten while it is still day. So what does this mean? It explains in halacha number 12. If a person deposited an Eruv 2,000 cubits eastward of his home and relied on it for the first day, so he's forbidden to walk eastward at all. Therefore, if he deposits the Eruv 1 cubit, 100 cubits, or 1,000 cubits to the west and relied on it for the second day, the second Eruv is invalid because he went 2,000 this way. Even if he went 1 this way, or 100 or 1,000, it's invalid. The rationale is that the second Eruv is not fit for him on the first day, that he may not reach it since he is not able to proceed toward the west at all, right? Because since you made the Eruv to 2,000 points on the east side, right? That means you can't go west on the first day. So therefore, since you can't go west, that second Eruv that you wanted for the following day is invalid because I'm not able to get to it. Right? Remember, we have to have the accessibility to eat it, to get there. And if we don't have that accessibility, then it becomes an invalid Eruv. If, however, he deposited his Eruv only 500 cubits eastward of his home and relied on it on the first day and deposited the second Eruv within 500 cubits to the west of his house and relied upon it for the second day, the Eruv is valid. Why? Because it's possible for him to reach it on the first day, because now 500 means that I can go this way, 1,500, and this is only at the 500. So that's not a problem since I'm capable of reaching it physically. Therefore, it is a valid Eruv that I can use it for the second day. When a holiday falls, remember, this is all an idea because on the first day you wanted to visit one person in one direction, and the second day you wanted to visit another person in a different direction. And this makes it valid and capable for us to be able to do that. When a holiday falls on Friday, it's forbidden to establish an Eruv for Shabbos on the holiday, right? Because it's a holiday. Can't do it on the holiday. So neither Eruv Chatzeres nor Eruv Tanchumin can't do any kind of Eruv. Instead, you should establish it on the eve of the holiday, which is on Thursday, the day prior to the holiday. Or Bayasa with 2-day holidays will be on Wednesday. If the 2 days preceding as a holiday in the diaspora, he says over here on Thursday and Friday, one should establish it on the Erev Chatzeres and Erev Tanchumi on the Wednesday, on the eve of the holiday. If a person forgot and didn't establish Erev beforehand, he may establish Erev Chatzeres in conditional manner. So you can still do it, Erev Chatzeres, in a conditional manner. What is that? On a Thursday or Friday. He may not, however, do this regard with Erev Tanchumim. You can do that for Erev Chatzeres, but not Erev Tanchumim. So he explains, what does this mean? Halacha number 15. On Thursday, right? Remember, you forgot. You're supposed to do it on the Wednesday, but you forgot. So on Thursday, the person should make the following stipulation. If today is a holiday, then what I'm saying right now doesn't mean anything. No consequence. But if not, in other words, if today is not a holiday, because remember, the reason we keep 2 days in the diaspora is because of rabbinic law, a custom actually, a rabbinic law. And today, let's say Thursday, it may not be the biblical holiday. So therefore, or let's say if it is a biblical holiday, then my statement is of no consequence. But if it is not the biblical holiday today, right, then you should be accepted as an Eruv because it's not the holiday. It's only the holiday biblically, rabbinically, not biblically. So therefore, we can make this statement, right? When does this apply? There's no consequence. But right, so that's the stipulation that you're making on the Thursday, so or on the Friday. When does this apply? For the 2 days observed as a holiday in the diaspora, but 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, by contrast, are considered to be an extended day. They are considered like a 48-hour, one block day, and therefore, with regard to this, it's impossible to establish the Eruv only the day prior to the holiday when it comes to Rosh Hashanah. And with that, Siluk Hilchis Eruv, and we bless God who grants us assistance that we have finished the laws of Eruv. Phew, that was a lot. Questions, any comments, any thoughts? Is everything clear? I guess. Yeah, no questions. So just as a brief summary, what we just learned, Erev Tanchumim, right? The truth is we really don't use this today. I don't know anybody that has used it. In times of a village that you wanted to go, you're living in Montreal, you're living in a city, it's quite a big city. And, to get beyond the outskirts of the city is like kind of a huge ordeal. But thinking, if you're living in Europe, in small towns, right? When you're living in smaller towns and you wanted to go to the next town over, so then this thing was something that was used. Again, the idea is rabbinic law, biblical law, you're not allowed to go 12 mil, which is about 12 kilometers beyond city limits. Rabbinic law, 2,000 amas, about 3,000 feet, approximately. Okay. But the same rabbi said, okay, we made that law, but we're also making a way that you can get beyond the law. And it's not a loophole in the law. What it is everything is that we need to be mindful of Shabbos. And when we're going to be able, and when we're going to start walking beyond and go places that are far, we're going to transgress the biblical law. So the rabbis then made this decree. In that decree, though, they made that you're going to be mindful about it. How are you mindful? Well, you sent an agent to put food there. You yourself put food in a place, right? You walked to the place or without food if you went to the place, actually, right? The rich people sent people to do it for them. The poor people went there and didn't have to put food, but they were, this tree didn't even have to verbalize. This is my sort of my Shabbos spot, so that, you know, tonight I'm going to be with my family, but tomorrow I'm going to go off and daven in the next town over so I could celebrate with my best friend that just got married, right? Which I wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So it's the same rabbis that gave that, you know, call it a loophole if you want. But in that, so they established all of the regulations of what that means, because it's all about, you know, doing it in a way that there's mindfulness and something that is real. So mindfulness that even if I started off on a place and I didn't even get there, sufficient. I got there, I didn't even verbalize it, sufficient. I sent somebody and maybe they got there, didn't get there, but it was, you know, someone who we can assume that because we gave them and they were going to do it, so we assume that they got there. That being said, it has to be something that I have accessibility to get there when Shabbos enters. When Shabbos enters, I had the accessibility, but then something happened after nightfall, stuff fell on it, and now I don't have the accessibility to it unless I do a forbidden labor. Doesn't matter, because once Shabbos entered, it's set, so to speak, in stone, right? The Eiruv that gives me the accessibility. But I don't have the real accessibility now. So what, you know, like, are we playing a game? We're not playing a game. Shabbos enters is a reality that occurred. I had the accessibility. I could have gone there. Now, if I was in a position that I did have the accessibility, then that would be a problem, right? So that's, we had all the parameters in that law of what made the accessibility, not the accessibility, right? In physical accessibility to get there, the thing got burnt up. If it got burnt up before Shabbos, then what's it then? Or got lost, then what? I don't have an Eiruv. Why? Because the law only comes into effect when Shabbos enters. Shabbos really only enters biblically nightfall, rabbinically, or it's a twilight time between sunset and nightfall, 3 stars, right? It's a twilight time. Is it day? Is it night? So since this is a rabbinic law, we take into we take a leniency over here. So once it enters, even though it's not 100% Shabbos, right? I mean 100% biblically, it is 100% Shabbos. So let's not make a mistake. Biblical law, rabbinic law is rabbinic law, but we're taking the leniency and saying that it didn't last until nightfall. It got this devoured, you know, 20 minutes into Shabbos. It's not nightfall yet. Doesn't matter. Shabbos entered. It was accessible. That means you can use that place that you've set aside for the Eiruv. You can walk from that distance tomorrow, so you could be with your friend. Some of the, just giving the whole scope of it, to give it a little kind of meaning, because of so many details over here, they can get lost in the nuance of it. But this is the idea here. Does that bring greater clarity? Yeah. Okay, we're good. All right, tomorrow we're learning about Yom Kippur. So I don't know, you could still eat tomorrow, by the way. Even if we're going to learn about Yom Kippur, you can still eat. All right, everyone, have a wonderful day. God
Thank you
bless.
so much, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Rabbi.
God bless you all. Be well.